Okay.
Okay.
So with the right shoulder, so this is the anterior portion, so that's looking forward. There's 4 muscles that make up the rotator cuff. So these are the 4 muscles. So this is the subscapularis, this is the supraspinatus, there's the infraspinatus, this is the back of the shoulder, and then the teres minor. So you've got some what's called tendinosis, which is inflammation or chronic inflammation of the tendon, which is what attaches the muscle to the actual humerus. Okay, so this white piece right here, that's tendon, and it attaches here, and when you get an inflammatory process from tearing or fraying, that's what happens. What I think happened in the it was snowboarding, right?
Well, I
Or
heard it
skiing.
like 4 years ago, the first time.
The first time. So that tendinosis is probably from the previous injury, okay? But the recent injury, that was snowboarding, right?
Yeah.
And so you have a contusion on this distal clavicle, which is right here. So that's the collarbone.
Yeah.
Okay? And here there's a contusion, which means bruising. So when you landed on that thing, the acromion probably got shoved into the clavicle and either bruised it, or it may have even caused a slight fracture. Okay. The other thing that happens is that there's ligaments. You can't see them in this picture, but there's ligaments which are like rubber bands that hold the bones together, okay? And there's a ligament right in here that holds this clavicle to the coracoid, and it's called the clavicle-coracoid ligament. So that ligament got stretched and may have caused a little bit of a separation of these 2 bones, which I think caused all the swelling, all the inflammation, all of the pain.
Okay.
So the good news here is that I think that the majority of this is going to continue to get better. I think it's just going to require time, okay? In addition to that, maybe some medications, some anti-inflammatories to just keep everything cooled off, and then rest, ice, those kind of things to just kind of get everything to heal up a little bit. Okay. I guess the point that I'm making is that I don't think this is a surgical thing. I don't think this is anything that's going to require any sort of surgical intervention, but it could end up bothering you for the next couple of weeks while it heals up. Okay.
How about that tendinitis that I've had in my shoulder probably for the last 4 years? It hurts whenever I walk the dog.
That again, that's what I was telling you, is that you've got tendinosis in this area. So treatments.
What do you recommend for that? Did I change careers?
Well, I would probably, anything that you do that's repetitive can cause that type of repetitive stress injury, which is what tendinosis is.
Yeah.
My recommendation would be either an injection. I think we talked a little bit about that. Maybe an injection. No? So I would do maybe a corticosteroid injection into the shoulder to try and cool some of the inflammation off. And then either oral medications like naproxen or diclofenac, which are anti-inflammatories.
Really hurt my stomach, though.
Those hurt your stomach. So maybe we stay away from those and we try something more like Medrol, which is a steroid for a short period of time.
Is that going to make me gain weight?
No. You would take it for 6 days. So you're not taking it long term. So
can you try one of the injections into my arm to see if that helps?
I can. Do you want to do that today?
Yeah. That's kind of scary, but
it's usually pretty well tolerated. It goes right in the back of the shoulder.
Yeah,
here.
and that'll help with the tendinitis too as well.
It should help with the inflammation. So a lot of people get a lot of relief from these injections. We do them, pretty commonly. So it's worth trying. And then I would combine that with the oral steroid to see if we can get a local inflammatory suppression with a systemic inflammatory suppression. Okay?
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hang on one sec. Like I said, I think the good news here is that this isn't anything that's going to require any sort of long-term care or surgical care. So I think it's just really a time issue. Okay?
Okay. What are you thinking for time-wise?
As far as like how long?
A complete heal, yeah.
How long ago was the injury? How long ago did you fall?
3.5 weeks ago now.
If you have a separation, or if it was any stress on ligaments and things like that, it's tough. It's hard to say specifically, but we look at 6 to 12 weeks being kind of that time
before
frame.
I should go back to work.
Well, I'd probably say 6 weeks, so 3 weeks from now, so 6 weeks from the injury, before you really start to get back to work, and then, kind of gauge how you're feeling at that point, and if you're doing better, then you can start working again. But you may even want to consider, you know, something like physical therapy at the end of this 3 weeks to start reconditioning and strengthening that rotator cuff too. So I could either write you for some physical therapy, or we print up some exercises that you can do at home that help strengthen up that rotator cuff and can really help with this with the shoulder stability.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Hang on one sec, all right?